The classes in Oblivion haven't really changed between the 2006 version and the 2025 remaster. However, I think because of the changes in leveling, it's important for us to go through each of the classes that Bethesda has pre-built for you in combat, magic, and stealth specialties, and go over how the changes in the leveling system and the skill system as a whole have impacted these classes in terms of their viability, their usefulness, and more. Let's get started. Now, you'll want to check out my video that gives a full in-depth guide into how the leveling system has changed specifically. But starting off with the warrior here, really the leveling system has changed in a way that just makes it a little more forgiving. You don't have to min-max your minor skills as much because you can choose what to put attribute bonuses into on your own. It's no longer reliant on leveling up those skills throughout your level 2. So that being said, the warrior I would still say I feel about the same on. That's because they still have blunt, hand-to-hand, and blade as their major skills, and once again, you're only going to be using one of those primarily for the most part, unless you happen to find a weapon that you really like, at which point you could always just switch then. But realistically, you're not going to find yourself using hand-to-hand, then taking out a mace, then taking out a sword. You're going to pick one. Heavy armor, block, and armorer are great stats to have. Athletics, I'm not in love with because of the fact that you can cheese that major skill. Next on the list is the Barbarian, very similar to the Warrior, except instead of heavy armor, you have light armor, and instead of endurance, you have speed as your favorite attributes. I would say the Warrior is probably still a better choice over the Barbarian. I think that the combat skills are still not great, having hand-to-hand, blade, and blunt all as your major skills, and I think endurance is a better attribute to have favored than speed. If you didn't watch my last video, I like to describe the Crusader as Bethesda's version of a paladin. Your favorite attributes being strength and willpower, so you'll be able to hit harder, carry more weight, and regen magicka fast. Your major skills, once again, I'm going to reiterate between the warrior and the barbarian. Having blade, blunt, and hand-to-hand, I don't love. Athletics is a skill I'm not in love with either, but restoration and heavy armor and destruction are all very cool. I love the combat, slightly magic hybrids, and the Crusader is a solid choice to be able to do that. So I'd put it in the middle of the pack in terms of your options in the pre-built classes. But once again, any kind of class that has blade, blunt, and hand-to-hand, I'm going to be a broken record with and say I don't like using half of my major skills for one type of usefulness in game. Now moving on to the knight, once again, getting it out of the way, blade, blunt, hand-to-hand, don't love it, pick one. I like that it has heavy armor. Illusion is a pretty cool school of magic. That way, you do get that little bit of combat and magic hybrid there. Block is super important to have in any combat stats, so if you make a combat custom class and you don't pick block, you're in for a tough time. Speechcraft is kind of okay. Usually I find myself with the persuasion and stuff, I just get a bunch of money and bribe people, so speechcraft isn't a very important skill for me, as I'll just bribe my way up to whatever I need to get the information I need from it. But I think this is a little bit more versatile than like the Crusader, the Barbarian, or the Warrior, which all seem too similar in just pure combat, nothing else. This at least gives you a little bit of illusion and speechcraft to play around with. If you don't really care about magic and you just want to kind of use a bow and arrow, but you don't really want to sneak around all that much either, but a little bit here and there, the Archer might be for you. Now, the Archer is a ranged class, but it is more focused in the combat side of things. That's why you'll see stats such as Armorer, Blunt, Blade, and hand-to-hand as well. Not going to repeat myself once again for the 5th time in a row. You know what I feel about Blade, Blunt, and hand-to-hand. But this does have light armor, marksman, and sneak. So this does give you some ranged ability with the bow, but you can also come in close with the blade or blunt depending on what your preference is here. Don't use hand-to-hand. You're really just wasting that skill. Next, we've got the Scout. As I said before in my last video, I'm still confused about this. Why the Scout doesn't have a marksman skill is absolutely beyond me. I don't love the Scout. I think acrobatics and athletics are some of those cheesy major skills to level up, so I'm not in love with doing it that way. I would prefer to have those actually be more combat or magic focused skills, but this class does have alchemy. It's got armor, which is great. Blade, block, light armor. You'll notice that it doesn't have all 3 types of combat skills such as blade, blunt, and hand-to-hand, which that makes me so happy. However, I would have liked to see maybe instead of acrobatics, having marksman on this list. I think that would fit a little bit more of a scout for me personally. Last for the pre-built classes, and I know you see that magic mauler down there on the bottom, we'll cover that a little bit later in our custom class video. We've got the rogue. Now the rogue is really surprising to me. I would have felt that this would have been more of a stealth class. Maybe that's my background between the Forgotten Realms and like traditional D&D and World of Warcraft and stuff like that, but the rogue doesn't have sneak and it doesn't have marksman, which to me were two stats and two skills that I feel are like almost must-haves for this class. You do get alchemy for potions and poisons and things like that, which is nice. Having blade and block is important, as well as light armor for those skills. But I think mercantile and athletics are a little bit weak. I would have loved to see maybe either a sneak, even though I'm not in love with the stat, I think it makes a little bit more sense as a rogue, and marksman on this list as well. Next, we'll be jumping on over into the magic category, starting with the mage. Now, the mage is still one of my favorite all-around casters. If you just want to use magic, you don't care about much else, pick a mage. You've got your favorite attributes with intelligence and willpower, so that's going to help your magicka total and your magicka regeneration. And your major skills are all schools of magic. So you've got your alchemy for potions and poisons, you've got alteration, you've got conjuration for summoning things, you've got restoration for healing yourself and your conjured summons, mysticism, illusion, destruction. These are all absolutely fantastic to have. There's really not a bad school of magic in this list that I would say. So this will give you a wide variety. A downside here is you have to buy spells or you have to grind through the Mage's Guild as fast as possible to make your spells. So definitely keep that in mind. You'll want to keep a lot of money on you to keep buying a new variety of spells. And the downside is that you'll be opening your inventory a lot because you only have 8 hotbars. And the problem is you're going to need more than 8 spells. So think about that when you make a mage. Next up on the list is Sorcerer. I still love this class. I don't think too much has really changed about this one. I would say personally, if I was building a custom class based off of this one, because I don't really find myself using mysticism too often, I'd probably end up replacing that for like a martial weapon skill such as blade, blunt, or even marksman. Just on the off chance that I'm in combat with a tough enemy and I run out of mana. Right now, as a sorcerer with these major skills the way they are, if you don't have mana, you're pretty screwed. So having that extra martial ability would be a little bit better in my opinion. But this is still a very top tier magic casting class for sure. Next on the list is a fan favorite, the Battlemage. Now, I don't love the Battlemage because I think it uses 2 of its 7 skills on both blade and blunt, which is pretty ineffective for my opinion. I think they should specify on one and maybe have the other one be in armor, whether it's light armor or heavy armor. I would have liked to maybe see light armor. That would make more sense with the picture. But the actual magic skills are pretty solid. Alchemy, alteration, conjuration, destruction, and mysticism. I don't love mysticism. I'd probably switch that out for restoration personally. But it does give you a wide potential of uses in terms of the different schools of magic, as well as giving you the ability to get up close and personal whenever you need to. The healer is one of my least favorite classes in the magic school, and that's really just because it just bothers me that these skills just don't feel effective for me. I see that they have speechcraft on there and mercantile, which are 2 super stupid skills in my opinion for a magic class, when you could use those for something like conjuration or another school of magic, or even just a blade blunt skill or some sort of armor skill. I think really just having the mercantile speechcraft, this is a very RP heavy class where if you're really looking to do well in the game, succeed, and kind of meta a little bit, definitely don't pick a healer. It's one of the worst classes you could choose. Coming to the last few classes in the magic school, we've got Spellsword, which is a personal favorite of mine. I love the willpower endurance attribute combination there for magicka regeneration and health regeneration, as well as maximizing your overall health level. Your major skills are all pretty solid with alteration, blade, block, destruction, heavy armor, illusion, and restoration. This will give you a nice combat approach for both your magic and your martial weapons. Love to see no hand-to-hand and no blunt on there because we have blade. But if you wanted to do something similar but were really partial to blunt weapons, I would copy this to a custom class and just swap out blade for blunt. Everything else here is pretty solid. The only other option I would say is maybe heavy armor for light armor if you want to have more room for loot, but you'll be a little bit less tanky as a result. Going on next to the Witch Hunter, The Witch Hunter is a mix of ranged and casting, so you'll see that it's got intelligence for a maximum amount of magicka and agility to help increase that bow damage. Your major skills being alchemy, athletics, conjuration, destruction, marksman, mysticism, and security. The only ones here I don't love are security and athletics. I think those would have been nicer to be switched into something else, maybe something to make the class a little bit more rounded, but I always tend to find myself going towards the balanced builds in a personal preference of mine. That being said, I don't think Witch Hunter by any means is a bad class to use. I would like to see Restoration with Conjuration, as I love that pairing in the major skills, but it's really not a bad choice at all. After the Witch Hunter comes the Nightblade to finish up our magic classes. Now this is pretty much a Witch Hunter who just uses a blade instead of a bow. So you'll see that the major skills are pretty similar. There is a slight difference in the attributes. Where Witch Hunter had intelligence and agility, this has willpower and speed. So this is more focused on the magicka regeneration side of things and moving quicker. Whereas the Witch Hunter was more focused on doing more bow damage and having overall more magicka. I think this is a pretty solid class overall. I like that there's only one skill that's used for martial weapons, and it gives you a variety of different magical options. However, I don't love acrobatics and athletics on the list. I think those are just cheesy skills to cheese some level ups out of, and I would just rather level those up passively while I play the rest of the game. Now that we've covered the combat and magic classes, let's go on over to the stealth classes. We're mixing it up a little bit from my last video. Starting with the Thief up here, I still feel the same way about the Thief. I don't think it has illusion magic and blade, which I think is a real big drawback for it. The favorite attributes aren't bad, and the major skills here, you've got acrobatics, speechcraft, and security and mercantile, which are all skills I usually don't choose myself, so that's what makes me kind of against the Thief as a class overall. It makes me think of them as a little bit weak. Speechcraft, Security and sneak, you can cheese those to level those up, so you don't really need those in major skills, because I still don't think you want to level too fast in the game. You want to really kind of balance those stats out, even though the leveling system has changed a little bit. I think there still is a scaling system that can come back and kick you in the ass if you do it wrong. Next one on the list for me is a little bit of a fun one. I like role-playing as an agent sometimes. The personality and agility is a weird and interesting mix of combination for their skills, because you get acrobatics, illusion, marksman, mercantile, security, sneak, and speechcraft. Now for these skills, you'll notice a lot of these on the list are ones that I personally won't choose in most classes, which is why I like playing as the agent every now and then, because it really makes me think outside of my comfort zone and play around with some skills that otherwise I don't think too much on. But it's a fun class. I think with marksman it does give it a little bit of combat potential, however I would have liked to see more, but definitely a cool and interesting RP class if you're into that kind of stuff. Up next is the Acrobat, which at the start looks like a really cool class because you've got agility and endurance there for your favorite attributes, but then you notice the major skills and it really kind of lets you down. Acrobatics, security, sneak, and speechcraft are all pretty mid, but fortunately this class does have blade, block, and marksman to give you some sort of combat potential. There's no magic here, which I would have thought would be kind of cool to maybe see an alteration or something like that, because, you know, acrobats should be able to feather themselves and kind of be able to jump even a little bit higher for that stuff. But, you know, that's just me being more nitpicky, because I do prefer the custom class option over going through these pre-built classes. So there's always going to be one or two skills on here that really kind of turn my nose up on them that I'd rather replace for something else. After the Acrobat comes the Assassin, in my opinion one of the best stealth pre-made classes you can get. Speed and intelligence are both solid attributes to have given your major skills of acrobatics, alchemy, blade, light armor, marksman, security, and sneak. I think it's one of the more fitting ones in terms of the skills to the class. You all know by now I wouldn't pick sneak, security, or acrobatics in my major skills, but I think as an assassin they fit perfectly. I would have loved to see illusion magic in here though, because I feel that illusion magic, going invisible and being able to do all that fun stuff, really just fits the assassin archetype. After the assassin comes the monk. Sorry, I clicked the pilgrim on accident, but we're at the monk. So the attributes themselves aren't bad, but the major skills I think are very, very weak. Acrobatics, athletics, hand-to-hand, security, and sneak. Honestly, fuck those skills. They're not really worth it to have as major skills in my opinion, at least as far as I enjoy playing the game. So to me, when I see the monk, the only things here that actually appeal to me is marksman and alteration. And at that point, I mean, you've got the start of a class there. You don't have an actual class. So I don't really want to give too much feedback on this. I would say all the skills that you know I don't like to use, swap them out for stuff you're more interested in, and you can even still kind of make hand-to-hand work, I guess. You won't find me kind of signing up on the hand-to-hand bandwagon, but if you're in love with it, don't let me tell you no. Moving on next to the Pilgrim, this is another kind of a letdown class in my opinion. When I look at it, I see, oh, favorite attributes, personality, and endurance. This could be interesting. Major skills, armor, fantastic. Block, great. Blunt, not my cup of tea, but not a bad call. Light armor, awesome. And then we get to the big pile of shit at the end. Mercantile, security, and speechcraft. I don't really know why that's all in there for the Pilgrim. I think the Pilgrim would be more suited towards having like restoration, kind of playing off that kind of religious aspect to a pilgrimage. And some other stats I think would be a little bit better here in terms of the skills to use. But ultimately, it's not a terrible class. It just doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth, I guess would be the best way to put it. Last but not least on the list, we've got the Bard here. So this one's a pretty interesting class in my opinion. I don't hate it, I don't love it, but I think in terms of the stealth pre-made classes, it is one of the better ones up there on the list. You've got a nice variety of uses. You've got alchemy, illusion, so you've got some magic capabilities. Blade and block is sword and board, which is always one of my favorite choices to go with. And I like light armor because it's not going to weigh you down too much and cause you to be over encumbered a lot. Mercantile and speechcraft I think are a little bit weak on the list, but I understand for a bard why you would have to kind of have those in there, because a bard is known for their charisma. So if you have a bard and you don't have charisma, you yourself, my friend, do not have a bard. And there we have all of Bethesda's pre-built classes with my opinions and overviews on all of them. I understand this may not have been as detailed as it was earlier in the week with my first video, but that's because a lot of this information didn't really change. It's more of just my opinions and my feelings on them what has changed, considering the new leveling system. So that being said, definitely you can still watch that previous video and still gain about 99.99% of the information. The only real difference is how the leveling has changed, which you'll be able to find a video focused specifically on that elsewhere on my channel. Next, we're going to look at some custom class options and some of my favorite choices, whether going combat, magic, or for stealth builds. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Every subscriber goes a long way towards me reaching my goal of 1,000 subs. Thank you so much.